As a woodworker, I really enjoy being able to build projects for friends and family as gifts. So about the time that the kids start heading back to school, my workshop turns into a little outpost of Santa's workshop. What I want to do is share with you my latest Christmas project. The idea here is to create a large centerpiece serving board. And I wanted it to really stand out. So it's big. It's 22 inches in diameter around the main part, and it's pretty thick, almost 1.5 inches thick. And then to have it stand out even more, I added a loop handle on the end with a recess. It serves as a handle for carrying the serving board or to be able to hang it on the wall when it's not in use. In the next few photos, you can see the process of how I built it. I hope you enjoy it. This serving board started as some 1.75 inch thick ash that was left over from a TV show project. The flat sawn grain isn't real appealing to me, so I cut it into strips at the bandsaw. I didn't have a lot of material, so I wanted to make the most of it. I drew a full-size pattern of the board on some paper. The pattern helps me lay out the strips starting at the center line. I'm looking for a good grain match at each of the joint lines. I rough sketched out the shape of the board on each strip. This way I could trim the strips and use the remaining sections on the shorter outer edges of the board. Turns out I had enough strips in order to keep the best ones. You notice that I numbered each strip to make sure they wouldn't get mixed up along the way. A 12-board glue-up is a recipe for disaster. Breaking it down into 3 sections allows me to concentrate on keeping just a few joint lines level. It's really tempting to start gluing boards together. I really like seeing the project start to take shape, but I resisted that long enough to check the fit of each joint and plane the edges where necessary. Here you can see why I cut the big boards into smaller strips. The straight, even grain of the ash makes it seem like a different material altogether. That vintage jointer plane in the background, that came from my grandfather. With that, it's time for the glue and clamps. Another benefit of breaking up the assembly into smaller sections is that I can use shorter clamps, which we have a lot more of in the editor's shop. From the 3 sections, I glued 2 together, again to keep things as calm as possible. The 2 vertical clamps hold the final glue line in alignment. The pencil lines I drew earlier serve to guide the position of each strip once the glue goes on. For me, this is where the project really started getting fun. The carbide scraper eliminated the large glue globs. Then a smaller hand plane took its turn to level out the panel. Let's call this the before photo. Taking care with the glue up means the joints should be pretty level already, with only some glue squeeze out to deal with. A person can get carried away with a hand plane and end up with a surface that looks good, but isn't flat. Pencil scribbles provide a good gauge to monitor my progress. At the midpoint of planing, the high spots are clean and smooth. The pencil marks reveal the low areas. A few more passes will bring the whole surface to the same level. This is the after. It can be a workout, but it's a pretty sweet payoff. And frankly, I enjoy hand planing as a meditative way to use my lunch hour. Referring back to my drawing, I laid out the shape of the board and the ring handle with a beam compass. My goal here was to maximize the size of the serving board. Cutting a round shape takes skill and a lot of sanding. So to give myself the best chance, I used a circle cutting jig for the bandsaw. The distance from the blade to the pin at the right equals the radius of the serving board. Here's the board on the jig. I cut as close to the handle as I could so the blade can nestle right in the notch for both the start and end of the cut. 3/4 of the way around and you can see how smooth the curve is. Using this jig means I only need to rotate the workpiece and keep an even feed rate. Just one more reason the bandsaw is my favorite shop machine. Here's the result of taking the time to set up the jig. That's going to make sanding and smoothing that much easier. By the way, I taped the hardboard piece at right to the bottom of the serving board to serve as an anchor point for the pivot pin. That means no hole in the board. I sized the ring handle to match a hole saw that we had on hand. You can do this with a hand drill, but having a drill press makes the result smoother and more consistent looking. This is the reason to buy quality tools. The inside of the handle is really smooth and with very little burning. I was pretty surprised to see this. I noticed a few minor cosmetic gaps in the joint lines. So I mixed up some custom filler from sanding dust and Titebond 3 glue. Masking tape keeps the filler where it belongs. If you know what to look for, you can see where the gaps were. I'm pretty happy with this result. A small, crisp chamfer catches the light and suits the simple profile of this serving board. I routed it after sanding the faces and the edges to 180 grit. The chamfer bit can't get into the tight corners where the handle meets the main board, so a little detail work with a chisel is called for. The natural tan and light brown colors of ash is really mellow and attractive, so my finish was simply a few coats of spray lacquer. It's a serving board and it won't be used as a cutting board, so a film finish works just fine here. This section also shows one of the filled gaps. I bet you can't find it. In addition to the excitement people have when they open up a project that I've made, I've had a chance to work on my woodworking skills and enjoy some quality time in the shop. Beyond that, I've found that it doesn't have to be a really elaborate, involved process to build something. It can be something simple, like cutting boards or even a serving board like this. So it's time for you to get out into your workshop. There's still time.